everybody, it's Christina of CraftyPaws. I thought I would come on here real quick and share with you guys a process video of how I created this sunny summertime birthday card. I wanted to squeeze this in before I spent the next couple of days at the Duluth Scrapbook Expo. That's here in Georgia, and I'm so excited to attend that. But before I go there, I wanted to share one more card with you that I made with the Scrapping for Less at the Beach June card kit. I am in love with this card kit, and this time I'm focusing on the LDRS Creative Just Beachy stamp set. I think it's so cute. These critters are adorable. And so first what I'm doing is I'm taking a stitch square die that I just had in my stash. This is from Simon Says Stamp, and I'm cutting out some squares. I wanted to create 4 little scenes with these little critters in them, and I thought the easiest way to do that is to just cut some white cardstock into these little scenes. And I had this little bit, a scrap piece of cardstock, so I just had enough room to cut out these 4 squares. Now I'm showing you guys that I also use the Simon Says Stamp stitch square die to cut out that background smiley face sun pattern paper. This is also from the kit, and I'm just placing those little white squares in a grid pattern. And this is actually following a sketch that is one of the My Favorite Things sketch challenges, and I'll put a link in the description box below to that as well. Sometimes when I'm running out of ideas of card designs, I check out different challenge blogs and get ideas or inspiration from those. And this sketch or this design is from the latest MFT sketch challenge. And I'm putting the whole little assembly there, the framed squares, on some fun foam so I can add a little dimension to this card. And now I am going to stamp out the sentiment, and it's from the same LDRS Creative stamp set, and it says, "Sending you sun kisses and warm wishes." And I decided I was going to heat emboss that on some black cardstock, not only to kind of ground the sentiment with the black, but I'm going to be coloring up some of those seals with gray tones. So I thought the black would complement those little gray seals nicely. And I'm using Ranger Superfine embossing powder. I'm just using a dry paintbrush to get off some stray little flecks of that embossing powder, and now I'm going to heat emboss it. I'm heating it from the front and the back so that it doesn't warp too much in one direction. And I love the kind of pop that heat embossing gives sentiments like this. And I decided, just because I wanted it to be a little bit more dynamic than just a little rectangular strip, I'm going to cut some fishtails, and that's just done by cutting a little way up, and then from the corners of the little rectangle strip, cutting toward that center, and that gives you the perfect fishtail. I'm going to be backing this again with some fun foam, so I'm just putting some wet glue down. This is just inexpensive Aleene's Original Tacky Glue and a little scrap of fun foam, and I'm putting that on glue on both sides, and I'm going to position that just under those framed little stitch squares. Now I'm going to be coloring up some of these images from that adorable stamp set. First, I'm going to color up this little sand castle, and you see the Copic colors that I use there. I'm just using some different tones to get some shadowed areas and some highlight areas. I'm trying to follow the image itself, and where there are those little indications of bricks, I'm going to be adding a little bit of a darker color. I'm also adding a bit of shading to those window insets, the doorway. So I'm going a little bit darker along the edges, and, you know, just adding that little bit of color variation from the light to the dark really helps make this little sandcastle look more three-dimensional. I'm going to go back in there a little bit, just adding another layer of that darker E53 there, just to emphasize some of those shadowed areas. Now I'm going to color that little flag, and even though it's teeny tiny, I'm going to actually add 2 colors of red there just to give it a little variation. And then I decide I'm going to color up the little crab. I first lay down the lightest color of red, and then I'm going for the mid-tone on the undersides of the legs, at the base of the little claws, where the legs attach to the body. And then now I'm going in with the darkest, that coral color. It looks red, but it actually is called coral, and it blends really nicely with the R22 and the R11. There's lots of space, obviously, between those numbers of red marker, but these seem to blend really nicely. Now I'm going to color up a couple of the seals. I'm going to keep the one up above with a paler kind of color. I'm just using the W0 and the W1. And I'm just making sure there's a little bit of shadowing at the lower parts of those seals, and I'm adding a little blush just to make it look like it's got rosy little cheeks. Now here's a little bit of shadowing. That's with the W1. I'm just adding it to the lower parts of the seal, the fins, the belly, and then along the sides of the face there and along the sides of the tail. I'm just going to go back in and blend that out. And now for the other seal, I'm going to color that with the same warm grays, but with a darker color. So this is the W5, and I'm coloring in the areas that I think should be darker, the edges, the lower parts of the fins, the tips of the tail, the lower parts of the face. And then I'm going back and blending with the W3. And then again, this is blending back, re-emphasizing the darker areas with the W5. And again, I decide I'm going to add a little bit of blush to this guy. So I'm using the same R20. It does show up even through the W5. And then again, with the belly, I just thought I'd go in with a little bit of a light W1. For the sun stamp, actually, I stamped this out with Tim Holtz Distress Oxide inks because this is more of a semi-solid stamp. It's not an outline that I can color. So I stamped it out with the yellow and the orange colors. If you're interested in the particular colors I used, please check out my blog post. And then I just edged it with the Memento Tuxedo black marker so that it would look like the other stamped images and have a black outline. Now here I decided for each of the little white squares, I'm going to add a little kind of the essence of sand for grounding the little critters. So I'm using some Tim Holtz Distress Oxide ink in Antique Linen. And I'm just putting a scratched piece of paper at the bottom there, and then I'm using a finger dauber just to blend on some of that ink so that it looks like the ground has some sand there. Really easy way to just make the scene make more sense and not have critters kind of floating. And now it's the fun part. I get to decide where I want each of the critters. So first I decide I'm going to put a little pop of red or coral there to the lower right or lower left, and then I can add the critter facing to the left there with that crab. And then above I'm going to put in that darker seal. I didn't want him sitting alone, so I'm adding one of the stickers from the card kit. And then that seal that I colored up off camera, that's exactly the same as the darker gray one, I'm going to tuck him behind that sandcastle so that the two seals look different, even though it's the same image. Just partially covering up this seal makes him look like he is building the sandcastle, and I thought that would be really cute. I also didn't want those two gray seals, darker gray seals, to be one on top of the other. That's why I've got them in the kitty corner squares. The little turtle I colored up off camera, and I decided he's also facing to the left, so I wanted him on the right side of one of these squares. Then I thought it'd be fun to add these little gem starfish, and I sprinkled 3 of them around in the little square scenes. Now for the card liner, I just printed Happy Birthday out on my computer, printed it out on some buff paper, and I'm putting that into the inside of the card. And then I'm using some cut aparts that were also in the card kit, a little sand dollar on the lower left and the seahorse on the upper right. And that's it for this card. It's super easy, really fun to do. If you like this process video, please give this video a thumbs up. And if you're interested in any of these summertime yummy crafty goodies, please check out Scrapping for Less. I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you so much for watching.